Okay, so this is the second video I will be doing for eTeach Abroad. This is also still part of my introductions, the getting to know you section. And the other half of this course, I believe, is wanting to know what my biggest teaching concerns are. Um, so yeah, I have a couple actually, and they only want really two, but I have a little more than two. But I'll um, elucidate on two things and go on to some just random ones, I guess. So my first biggest concern is unknowingly saying the wrong thing. So I know this, like when you're an educator, you have to say the right thing to your students. And if you don't, if you say the wrong thing, they're going to hold on to it and believe that as a certain truth, and they will keep that with them as long as you correct it. I know it might not be a big deal, but the longer you wait, the longer it's going to be in that student's mind. So you're going to have to correct it as soon as possible. I know when I was in linear algebra in the college course, this one teacher he basically gave a um, he told us something that was incorrect, I believe, and he didn't wait until the next day to actually tell us that what he said was incorrect, or I believe what he had on the slide. It was either what he had on the slide was incorrect, or what he said was incorrect. So even just like visual or even auditory, if those things, if you what you say or what you show someone is not the truth, it's gonna stick with them for the longest, and they're gonna think it's true for the longest. Like I remember, can't even remember what the subject matter was. Something about certain matrices and how to augment him, and he said something, and I know it. It just like what he said. I was like, okay, this must be true. So I'll just keep this in my memory as long as possible. So I kept that in my memory, and when it came to the test, of course, I was holding on to the wrong thing. I mean, he corrected me the next day, but it was stuck in there for too long. So this has to deal with like certain facts, or even let's see, what else did I jot down? Um, so it's not even just facts. So being unaware of a student's cultural or familial background. If you're going to talk about a literary text, you're going to have to make sure that you're not insulting that student's culture or even their background or where they came from, because you're going to realize there's like up to 30 or 40 students in one classroom, and you're going to have to be aware of all of them. You can't insult that, not one single one. And also using incorrect vocabulary. Um, that might be a big thing. Keeping the vocabulary correct is also, I find, to me, it's at least important. Um, so yeah, I've always thought about using incorrect vocabulary, but not in the sense that what I say is necessarily incorrect, but that it's just completely false. Like if I use book instead of like a tree, like you can't use that as the same noun. But using word, like the thing that I find like interesting is the fact that vocabulary can be expansive. You could use different words for different things, so I'm not gonna be too hard on myself if I use a certain verb that can be used by another verb, like running instead of jogging. I'm not going to be too big on that. But just using like the absolutely the wrong thing, I find that disconcerting. Disconcerting. Also, so number two. So that was number one. Being incorrect about certain, saying the wrong things, basically. Number two is being a bad or boring teacher. So I noticed as I'm like talking, my voice is kind of monotonous. So I need to work on that. So I need to like start inflecting my voice more so that I'm not so monotone. Mr. Bolstad, he was pretty good on this. He was actually he had various like different ways of saying it. He wasn't just like a like that guy from that teacher from Ferris Bueller. Like all he says is just Bueller. This is how this works. Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. So maybe I could work on. I like impressions, so I'm gonna start impersonating different people a little more because I like impressions. I got a British impression, a Jamaican impression. I have an Obama impression I might like working on. So I'm gonna use that every now and then. There's also yeah, being a bad or boring teacher. That's number two. Speaking in monotone, that's part of being that. Fear of students not wanting to come to class. So I remember there are certain classes that I just hated going to. Like there was actually an English teacher. I just hated going to her class because just hated going to her class. Everything she said, I did not care one single bit. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I started hating English in high school. I mean, I had an English professor in college that I didn't. I mean, I started liking her in the beginning, but even later on, you just like, I wish I didn't pick this course. So yeah, I wish I could find a way so that students would actually want to come to class. I know I had a couple of teachers that were always, they told so many stories. So maybe I'm gonna use stories or something. Maybe I can use a little more allegory and metaphors or something. Being looked down upon as an educator in that same field by different educators in that field. That's also a big thing. I never want to be a bad teacher, obviously, and there are teachers who are going to either look up to you or they're going to wish you weren't a teacher. And also, there's also the inability to interpret text so that students are unaware of what the author's viewpoint is. So if I if I gave a student like a text, I want them to be able to interpret the author's viewpoint and what that student's gonna. I want them to be able to figure out what that author is gonna say through the various styles or uses of imagery, motifs, themes. I want them to be able to understand that text. So there's also these miscellaneous things like these are just random, like having a spot on my clothing. I don't want to go into class and have like some coffee stain on my shirt or something. I'm also scared of like bad hair days. Also being a bad influence. I don't want to be a bad influence. I want to be that kind of influence that students look up to, and I don't want to be able to like just get away with things because I can get away with it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a bad influence. Also, bad personal days. I've had a bad personal day as a substitute teacher, and to be honest, when you go to a class and you have a bad day, it is not fun at all. Yeah, so those are the things that I have as concerns. Also, I didn't say in my other video, I had these two other teachers in my college courses. Sophia Ajay, she was a linguistics teacher, and Professor Charles McQuarrie, he was also an English teacher. They're pretty awesome people. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. Don't want to be a bad teacher.